There are moments in football when a player does more than score goals. There are moments when a player changes history. And at the 2026 FIFA World Cup, Kylian Mbappe did exactly that. 10 goals, the Golden Boot, and a record that had stood for years. Now, Mbappe is the all-time leading scorer in FIFA World Cup history. But this story is not just about 10 goals. It is about a young boy from France who dreamed of becoming a football legend. A boy who once watched the greatest players in the world and dreamed that one day the entire world would watch him. That day has arrived. And the question is, how did Kylian Mbappe become one of the greatest World Cup players the game has ever seen? This is the story of Kylian Mbappe, the World Cup king. Kylian Mbappe's journey to football greatness began in France. From a young age, his incredible speed and natural talent were impossible to ignore. He was different. When Mbappe received the ball, defenders had a problem, because by the time they realized what he was about to do, he was already gone. His speed became his greatest weapon, but speed alone does not make a football legend. Mbappe also developed incredible technique, his dribbling, his finishing, his movement, and his ability to perform under pressure. All of these qualities turned a talented young player into a global superstar. Then came the moment that changed everything. The 2018 FIFA World Cup. Mbappe was only 19 years old, but instead of being afraid of the biggest stage in football, he embraced it. He scored important goals. He terrified defenders with his pace, and he helped France win the World Cup. Suddenly, the world knew his name. Kylian Mbappe was no longer just a talented young footballer. He was a World Cup champion, a superstar, and a player with the potential to become one of the greatest of his generation. But becoming a champion is one thing. Staying at the top is something completely different. 4 years later, Mbappe returned to the World Cup, Qatar 2022. The young player who had shocked the world in 2018 was now one of the biggest stars in football. This time, the expectations were even higher. And in the final, Mbappe produced one of the greatest individual performances in World Cup history. France faced Argentina. And on the other side stood another legendary player, Lionel Messi. The match became an unforgettable battle between two generations. Mbappe scored, then he scored again, and then again. A hat-trick in a World Cup final. It was an extraordinary performance. But France eventually lost on penalties. Mbappe had scored 3 goals, but he did not lift the trophy. For many players, a moment like that could break them. But Mbappe continued, because great players are not defined only by how they celebrate victory. They are also defined by how they respond to defeat. And then came 2026. The World Cup returned. A new tournament, a new challenge, and a new opportunity. Mbappe entered the tournament with something to prove. He had already won the World Cup. He had already scored in a final. He had already become one of the biggest names in football. But history was still waiting. And Mbappe was ready. From the beginning of the tournament, he looked unstoppable. His speed was still there. His finishing was still there. But now there was something else. Experience. Mbappe was no longer the teenager who shocked the world in 2018. He was now a leader, a captain, and the face of French football. He scored, and scored again. Match after match, the goals continued. His performances became one of the biggest stories of the tournament. And slowly, the record books began to change. Every goal brought Mbappe closer to the greatest World Cup scoring record of all time. For decades, the names of legendary players had stood at the top. Miroslav Klose, Ronaldo, Lionel Messi, great players who had created their own place in World Cup history. But Mbappe was coming, and he was coming fast. Then the moment arrived. Kylian Mbappe reached the top. With 10 goals at the 2026 World Cup, he won the Golden Boot for the second consecutive tournament. And with 22 World Cup goals across 3 tournaments, he became the all-time leading scorer in FIFA World Cup history. Think about that, 22 goals, only 3 World Cups, and an average of 1 goal per match across his World Cup career. These numbers are not just statistics, they tell a story of extraordinary consistency, a story of incredible talent, and a story of a player who continues to perform when the pressure is at its highest. But Mbappe's journey was not only about scoring goals, it was also about leadership. At the 2026 World Cup, he was no longer simply France's star player. He was their captain. The responsibility was enormous. Millions of people were watching. An entire nation was expecting something special. And Mbappe carried that responsibility onto the pitch. He led, he scored, he created chances, and he continued to make history. But football does not always give you the ending you want. France reached the semifinals, but their journey to the final ended against Spain. The dream of another World Cup title was over. And once again, Mbappe was forced to face disappointment. But even without another World Cup trophy, his individual achievements were extraordinary. 10 goals, 4 assists, the Golden Boot, and the record of becoming the greatest goal scorer in World Cup history. Mbappe's story is now connected forever with the biggest tournament in football, from the teenager who lifted the trophy in 2018, to the superstar who scored a hat-trick in the 2022 final, to the captain who broke the World Cup scoring record in 2026. His journey has been remarkable. But perhaps the most impressive part of his story is that it may still be far from over. Kylian Mbappe is still only 27 years old, and already his name stands alongside the greatest players in football history. But the question remains, where does he go from here? Can he win another World Cup? Can he become the greatest footballer of his generation? Can he challenge the incredible legacy left by legends like Lionel Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo? Only time will tell. But one thing is certain, Kylian Mbappe has already created a legacy that will be remembered for generations. He has shown the world that speed can become a weapon, talent can become greatness, and determination can turn dreams into history. A young boy from France dreamed of becoming a football star. He stepped onto the biggest stage in the world. He became a World Cup champion. He experienced heartbreak. He returned stronger. And then he broke one of the greatest records in football history. Today, when Mbappe steps onto a football field, the world watches, because everyone knows something special could happen. A goal, a sprint, a moment of magic, or perhaps another piece of history. Kylian Mbappe's story is still being written. But the chapters already written are unforgettable. He is no longer just the boy who dreamed of becoming a footballer. He is now the World Cup king. And perhaps the greatest chapters of his story are still waiting to be written. So now, the question is for you. Do you believe Kylian Mbappe can become the greatest footballer of his generation? Can he surpass the legacy of Messi and Ronaldo? Share your opinion in the comments. If you enjoyed this documentary, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and stay with us for more incredible football stories. Because behind every legend, there is a story. And every great player has a journey that deserves to be remembered. Thank you for watching. See you in the next documentary.